Hello friends, Nora. Here I want to take you through a case that still echoes across Woodland Park, a case of love, betrayal and manipulation that ended with a life brutally erased the night the world was giving thanks. In a quiet home, aromas of cinnamon and sweet potatoes masked a plot that had been brewing long before the snow settled on the Rocky Mountains. Kelsey Berreth grew up in the lake-framed town of Moses Lake, raised on farmland. She learned early responsibility, grit, and patience. Her childhood mornings were chore-filled but peaceful, her evenings loud with family laughter. The sky above her family's farm felt endless alight with possibility. Her greatest passion was flight. The hum of aircraft engines thrilled her more than anything. She enrolled in the Big Bend Community College Aviation program, working toward her dream of becoming an aerial agriculture pilot. She later became a certified flight instructor, known for steady hands and a calming voice. Her dedication to aviation brought her to a new chapter, with a job at DOS Aviation in mid-2017. She relocated fully to Colorado, drawn to mountain trails, pine forests, and the slower rhythm of small-town living. She was a 29-year-old woman with a grounded outlook, hopeful eyes, and a young daughter who adored her Kelsey's connection to the outdoors. Made her frequently hike the Manitou Park recreation area, where she found moments of quiet away from personal stress. Patrick Frazee, a local ranch hand known in Florissant, lived on a 35-acre family ranch where he trained herding dogs, shod horses, and worked livestock. He and Kelsey met on the dating platform, Plenty of Fish. Their bond moved fast, passionate and consuming. Within months their worlds intertwined. They were engaged by late 2017 and welcomed their daughter, Kaylee, nicknamed Baby K. Despite the early intensity, cracks formed quickly. Patrick resisted independence from his routine, and Kelsey struggled with the emotional weight of feeling like a single parent while still engaged. Kelsey chose autonomy, moving into her own townhouse in Woodland Park, the home she made warm and inviting for her daughter, decorated modestly with candles, cozy blankets, and children's toys. It carried the feeling of safety she had carved out for herself. Patrick still visited occasionally, but each visit carried emotional contradiction. Smiles, strained conversations, unfinished conflicts lingering just below polite surface tones. The days before Thanksgiving 2018 were cold and normal. Kelsey spoke to her mother Cheryl on video chat. Through the Facebook Messenger, Cheryl noticed nothing alarming, only holiday excitement and gentle exhaustion from parenting. Kelsey sent Patrick a final casual message about pecans and casserole at midday on Thanksgiving Thursday, a message that would later feel chilling in hindsight. Then came the 22nd of November 2018, Thanksgiving Day. What the world didn't know was that for Patrick, the day was not about gratitude. It was the date he had chosen to end a life. Earlier, Crystal, Lee Kenny, a nurse living 700+ miles away in Gooding, had been in steady communication with Patrick. They met long before Kelsey ever entered the timeline of his life. Crystal and Patrick crossed paths in 2006 on the rodeo circuits, though one felt love, the other control. Crystal held emotional attachment for years, believing that eventually her loyalty might be rewarded. Patrick manipulated that attachment. He spoke lies about Kelsey, calling her unstable, addicted, unfaithful. He planted seeds of distrust slowly until Crystal believed the threat was not only real but deserved. Patrick asked her to help end Kelsey's life multiple times, each attempt shrouded in new excuses, new urgency, new emotional pressure. Criminal plots often feel dramatic in storytelling, but what makes this one terrifyingly real is how ordinary the delivery felt to those unaware. In late September 2018, Crystal attempted poisoning by coffee. She mixed toxic substances pilfered from medical access, hoping to satisfy Patrick's push. Kelsey never drank it. The cup stood untouched, a quiet rejection of a murder that would only harden Patrick's obsession. A second plot involved striking at the home, but animals alerted neighbors. Crystal fled. Patrick raged, then coerced a third attempt involving a bat and roadside waiting. Crystal again backed out, fear overriding manipulation. At every stage, Patrick recalibrated his control, tightening urgency, emotional pressure, guilt, reward, and abandonment, psychology in equal measure. Finally, he decided to act himself. On Thanksgiving evening, he arrived at Kelsey's townhouse footage, later confirmed by a neighbor's ring. He walked in carrying a bouquet of deception, warm kisses, gentle touches, and candlelight hid the metal reality he would later swing into the back of her skull. Patrick suggested a blindfold game sent. Guessing with the candles, Kelsey agreed, trusting the man she wished would finally value fatherhood. She tied the blindfold. Patrick lifted a bat. When her head leaned forward, vulnerability captured in darkness and struck. Once she dropped, he struck again and again, until his arms carried the fatigue of certainty, not hesitation. Crimes of the heart are not always impulsive. This was planned, psychological cold, and executed with disturbing commitment. The night air was sharp mountain cold. It didn't carry screams that neighbors reported, only silence that investigators would later call the most unsettling element of the case. Because silence meant one thing: the victim never stood a chance to escape. Crystal arrived 13 hours later in the small winter light of early morning, wearing full protective forensic gear. They gathered blood-touched items, toys, clothes, rags, even candles, and burned them in a barrel. Fire obliterates evidence, but rarely conscience. Crystal later admitted that even while scrubbing walls, she quietly realized the horror of what loyalty had cost her psychologically, so she left microscopic traces behind, almost like breadcrumbs of guilt she unconsciously wished would be discovered. Patrick transported Kelsey's body to his ranch. On a child's sheet of plastic, she was carried like an inconvenient object, not a mother, not a partner, not a dream. Crystal witnessed him pour gasoline and engine oil, lighting a trough fire that burned all night long. Flames were seen silently from a deck by Sheila Patrick's mother. She observed without realization that human tissue, not winter logs, crackled in that fire. Silence again, a key witness even when words were not. Investigators from the FBI later joined the case after digital tracing patterns pointed away from a voluntary disappearance. They pulled vast datasets, call logs, pings, vehicle movement, geolocation association networks, and interview corroborations. One of the strongest clues emerged from cell phone tower pings and message timing. Kelsey's phone traveled miles to Idaho, managed by Crystal, texting under instruction to create the digital illusion that the young mother still lived. It was a technological ghost, sending words that weren't hers through miles of quiet highways, small towns, gas station lots, and long-distance abandonment psychology. Once Kelsey's blood was confirmed in her home, the case shifted categories legally from missing person to homicide investigation. The interrogation room dynamics of crime documentaries often feel tense, but for Kelsey, the room she never lived to see was built from datasets, conversations, fragments of bleach fumes, and lines of lies that slowly collapsed around Patrick as pressure mounted. Patrick attempted a narrative defense, claiming depression, addiction, rehabilitation, exaggerations, therapy, instability, all crafted to delegitimize victim credibility and justify disappearance. He spoke declarations, not concern feeding false psychological profiles into the investigation stage. He tried reframing the victim's biography after death, a tactic investigators later classified as intentional motive, obfuscation through character assassination. When confronted with evidence, he doubled down, stubborn, insulated in ego defense and control fixation. The judicial case that unfolded at the Teller County District Court revealed the darkest part, not only the murder, but the motive, a distorted battlefield of custody dominance, emotional ownership, and narcissistic control that couldn't tolerate contradiction or maternal autonomy. Patrick wanted full decision power, and when Kelsey exercised independence, he experienced it as a personal insubordination, not partnership negotiation. The verdict delivered later confirmed guilt. Life imprisonment came reinforced by additional sentencing counts related to solicitation, homicide conspiracy, and abuse of a corpse defined legally as evidence destruction and human desecration beyond murder. Her parents, Cheryl and Daryl, later received full custody of Kaylee, raising her back on the family farm in Washington, far from the fire that ended her mother's life. the grandmother Sheila fought custody, but evidence, clarity, motive, context, and child safety priorities centered Cheryl's home as legally and psychologically the safer environment. Conscience, loyalty, manipulation, and motive clarity are the psychological pillars of this documentary case. It teaches us that betrayal in crime is rarely loud or cinematic. It often whispers through kitchens, farms, text messages, doorbell footage, and emotional attachments, exploited slowly like tightening rope fibers, until one day it snaps. Kaylee's laughter, heard in early home videos, now lives as a contrast echo to what was lost. Not only a mother, but a voice soft, steady, patient, and aspirational, whose dream of flight was grounded by someone else's dream of dominance. Kelsey should be remembered not for how she died, but for how she lived as a woman who chased the sky, guided students, carried patience through emotional conflict, and held her daughter longer than she should have been allowed at the hinge of someone else's violent control failure. Even after conviction, Patrick still declared innocence from behind bars, not uncommon in narcissistic custody motive crimes, where guilt rationalization reconstructs itself psychologically as victim mentality or scenario entitlement. But evidence stands loud, even when he never did. DNA hardware, digital tracing, forensic residue, tower pings, witness collapse, behavioral contradiction, history of coercive attempts, and motive consistency formed the legal mosaic that sealed the truth. This case reminds investigators, psychologists, juries, and viewers alike that evil doesn't always look eye to eye. It often looks door to door, candle to bat, message to ping, promise to absence, and silence to fire. I want you to sit with that silence for a moment, because documentaries tell stories, but silence is where truth lives before detection. A peaceful farm girl became a missing young mother, then finally a homicide victim, not by stranger threat, but by partner betrayal, wrapped in the disguise of candlelight, a scent guessing game, and emotional dominance that couldn't tolerate autonomy. And that is where this story still hits deepest. Not only the crime itself, but the emotional revelation that the closest hand lifted the final strike and the final fire. This story travels slowly, like all real cautionary tales, not to sensationalize, but to honor the investigative pacing that uncovered it, piece by digital piece. Forensic trace by forensic breath. Lie by lie, collapse by collapse, silence by silence, until evidence finally spoke where a cowboy never would. Nora would tell you that the truth always reveals itself, but the tragedy is that for Kelsey, the reveal came posthumously told by data witnesses, cameras, conscience collapse, and evidentiary science. Not rescue, not return, not voice, but justice. A justice that her daughter Kaylee will grow up knowing one day, not through rumor, but through documented truth, controlled pacing, and forensic clarity that finally corrected the narrative written about her mother after she could no longer defend it. The saddest part isn't that monsters can live among us, it's that sometimes love opens the door for them and trusts them longer than instinct should allow, and silence hides it better than any scream could have. But documentaries exist because we refuse to let silence have the final say forever. Kelsey deserved her dream, and her daughter deserved her voice, and the world deserves every reminder that awareness matters, patience for justice matters, and evidence is the only narrator stronger than manipulation. And now, my friend, you know the story fully told, calmly, seriously, emotionally, steadily, slowly, pointedly, truthfully, humanely, investigatively, psychologically, realistically, and unforgettably, because unforgettably is the ethical duty that crime documentaries carry when lives are lost under the pretense of love control or family illusion.